I'm Brian Robert Oliver. This is the Infinite Eleven's Anatomy of Horror. Tonight, I wanted to talk about Hereditary. It's written and directed by Ari Aster. Coming up next. In Hereditary, we follow the lives of Annie and her family after the death of her mother. Life seemingly gets back to normal shortly thereafter until an unspeakable tragedy is afflicted upon them. Processing the pain becomes too much to bear for Annie, and her sanity comes into question after she becomes convinced that this terrible tragedy is somehow linked to her departed mother, especially when the tragedies begin to compound at a frightening rate. Now, this is a divisive film. Horror movies, they have that tendency, for a lot of reasons. But Hereditary suffered from high expectations. The scariest film in years is what some critics were saying. Joshua Rothkopf of Time Out even said that Hereditary is this generation's The Exorcist. That's unbelievably high praise, and there is no possible way it was going to live up to the hype for everyone. For most people with at least a passing interest in horror films, the one thing a horror movie must do is scare them. So when you tell them that this movie that they haven't seen yet is among the scariest of all time, people expect to be scared more than they ever had. And for the regular filmgoer, the term horror movie is not without context. Most people have their own idea of what a horror film is, whether it be slashers, thrillers, cosmic, paranormal, however. Hereditary is not your normal horror film. From the very first shot of the film, you know that this is not a normal movie. The pace of the movie immediately defines how you enter into this world, and Aster's pacing equates to a sort of depressing meditation on family dynamics. Now, this could be debated, but I feel that Hereditary's implicit meaning is a statement about family and free will. In essence, we are controlled by our ancestors and adhere to beliefs that generation upon generation failed to properly question. And with these beliefs, so is dysfunction passed down over and over. Themes include severe trauma, mental illness, dysfunctional family, loss, paranoia, control, conspiracy, and groupthink. So I'd like to discuss with you certain aspects of this film that I thought were absolutely masterful. The entire film is phenomenal, but I only have so much time, so I'm only going to talk about two things that really stood out to me. First, Ari Aster's strong visual language, and I'm going to start with the first scene, which, by the way, has been covered expertly by Collative Learning's Rob Ager, who really breaks down this first scene with a fine-tooth comb. In fact, he has a lot of great film analysis insight, and I pasted a link to the description below if you're interested into deep dives into some of your favorite films. But I'm not going to break down this shot, this scene. I'm only pointing out a style that Aster introduces from his very first shot. So right away, you notice the pacing and constant pushing into the frame, or the dolly shot. We know this is important, this miniature house, but we don't know why, not yet. So watch how this unfolds. This is such a cool way to open a film. We are being told to equate this toy house with this family, especially to this character, Peter. And what's even more cool is that preceding this first shot is an obituary of this character's grandmother. And then it cuts to their treehouse outside before we end up here in the very same shot of Peter's room. Now, why would Aster do this? To fool us? Maybe, but then watch this. There's the house, the actual house that the miniature represents in the very first shot. Now watch this.
Shoes off, everybody.
See that?
Shoes off.
The camera movement, it's familiar, right? The scene takes place about 4 minutes after that first shot, so it's fresh in our memory. And this is our director telling us that you need to make a correlation between the real house and the miniature house. That these characters are playthings for something much bigger. And this doesn't end with this shot either. The entirety of what is shot in the house, all the square patterns, the windows, the doors, the archways, always gives us the feeling like we are watching humans in a human-sized diorama, much like the ones Annie makes in her studio. And this is just a really good example of committing to a style, especially one so subtle and rich with subtext, and just one of the many reasons why this is such a good film. And the room that Annie and her husband, Steve, share, here's another example right here. And then this is a shot earlier in the film. You see that? Look at the two eyes staring over the bed. This is so reminiscent of Rosemarys Baby, and Kristen Grady wrote an excellent article that's on our site, the811.net, and I'll put a link below. But those two windows inside the bedroom above the bed is certainly not an accident. It gives us the feeling that we are being watched, especially in the bedroom where Annie nursed her children, and that also falls in line with themes of being controlled by an unknown force. So another stylistic thing Aster does here to enhance the horror are these dolly movements and tilts, added to otherwise static shots, where the pacing is super slow and the movement of the camera moves at a pace just a bit faster than what we're seeing on screen, just like this one. It's almost jarring, but not quite. And then this one. This might be my favorite shot of the entire film. The shot feels so safe and unassuming. There's this empty space in front of Peter, but nothing out of the ordinary, and then Annie pops in, but it doesn't feel threatening until that incredible sideways tilt. It feels so jarring, and then when our eyes get used to the change, the shot feels so invasive and crowded and uncomfortable. And the casting was so well done. Few actresses can pull off the nervous, neurotic, psychotic actions like Toni Collette. And to cast the always calm, stoic, and reasonable Gabriel Byrne to contrast that works so well. So there you have it. Hereditary stars Toni Collette, Gabriel Byrne, Alex Wolff, and Millie Shapiro. Until next time.